You done failed me. Sadly, we're through. What are you doing here? Huh? Really? I only use this if I need it. It's just a pincher. There's a good example of a really bad tooth. I'll just bring it back to shape. I can hand file this chain after doing this, or because I'm gonna go and cut some dirty wood with it, I can just run it. This is what I call a scuff. This sharpen to this point. It's not sharp. It's not sharpened. The actual blade of the chisel is not sharpened. It's not sharp. It's angled right. It's got the perfect angle. It's clean. It's got the point back. There's a really burly one there. You can see the chip out of the tooth. This chain did hit some stuff last time I used it. There's another pretty burly one. The only thing that these grinders are good for in my book is getting rid of that. You see now it's a sharp point. It's not a sharp chain, it's a sharp point, and it's a sharp angle. Top plate is meeting up with the chamfer. The chamfer is the inside angle on the front of the tooth. Top plate meets with chamfer at optimal angle. You can't get much of a smaller edge on that unless you hand file it. Because remember that we talked about, that's a little hot. I got a little deep there, but we're trying to just straighten them. These are beat anyway. This chain doesn't have much life left in it. I think it's 3 chains joined together actually, with a couple repair links. Top plate meets with chamfer at optimal angle, because remember when we talked about filing and actually sharpening the chain, if you look really close, you see that little tiny point. There's a little tiny, see how I wipe it with my finger and it goes away? That's the chrome. That's the chrome plating on the, just in the belly. You see it there? I just peeled it up again and pushed it off. Now it's sitting on the front of the tooth. That's chrome plating. The outsides of these teeth are chrome plated. Well, the entire tooth is. Microscopic chrome plating that gives the very microscopic, that top plating on there, is what gives the chain its absolute sharpness. Now sometimes these sprockets like to stick and we have to just loosen them up. Don't bend your teeth, or don't bend your sprocket this way. Just lightly. Give it a few little taps. This is canola oil. Mostly this is from canola oil, because if it sits around for a long time, canola oil is definitely going to do that. And see, this bar is definitely wrong for this saw. I got to turn this way to show you guys that it's wrong for this saw, because even our studs here, these studs are too small for this bar. This is a huge saw bar. So if I didn't need it to cut this one piece of wood, I probably would not put it on here. But that just goes to show the other reason why we don't just go slapping stuff on a saw, because that's going to cause issues. I would not want to run this bar on this saw for very long with that whole deal going on. I'd want to change the studs out to a bigger stud. I don't know if I have them or not, because I haven't had any large size saws here in a while. McCulloch, I've had older McCulloch monster saw, but the bar on that saw, the way the hilt of the bar, you see it on that one bar that I have left over from one of those saws, that is sized for a smaller saw. In modern day language, works on a smaller saw pretty well. So that's why I don't really mess with the older McCullochs anymore, because they're odd. And they just, you're not going to find them that are in really good shape. They're all pretty beat now. They've had their time. This saw will turn this bar. This saw will work with this bar. To a point, it's going to have its limits. It fits much better. It actually fits much better on the 390. That's kind of why I want the 390 back in action, because this bar, I can put it on that saw. I don't really care about that saw. I can push that saw with this bar on it and buy $100 motor replacements for that saw and not be too worried about it. Let me check my fuel. And you'll see when I first start this saw up, it's gonna struggle a bit to turn that big chain. But that's okay. I can use it for slabbing too, but I don't want to get real crazy with it. I'd rather have a 24-inch or a 30-inch on here. I think this is 36 or 40. This is a little bit of a lot too much. Alright, so we all know that using a grinder is not the only way to get a chain sharp. We all know that it's not technically, according to 90% of the people who sit on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, it's heresy for most of those people. It's taboo, whatever. It doesn't, personally, I don't think it makes you any more or less of a man. Whether you use a grinder or a file to sharpen. And 90% of the time I use a file. This is to get the teeth straight, to get the angle all the same, to get the length of the tooth all the same. This is to get the chain back to equilibrium, to get a very balanced chain. That's why we use the grinders, as we've discussed before in many videos. Yes, you can get the angle of the teeth all the same with a file if you're very skilled. Yes, you can get them all back to shape from whatever. I mean, these teeth were pretty nailed. They were pretty hammered. I prefer the grinders. I don't really care what other people say. If you don't like the way I do it, then you have two choices. You can either not watch my videos, or you can go watch all my other videos where I explain sharpening, and you'll see that there's many different ways to crack neg. There's many different ways to sharpen a chain. Personally, I prefer hand filed. If I keep the angle the same and if my teeth don't get chipped, I'll hand file a chain for a year without putting it on a grinder if that chain stays clean and doesn't get hammered. I prefer, for grinding, this is unorthodox too, many people have knocked me for using cheaper grinders. They said, that's going to mess your teeth up because it's a cheap grinder. I said, I've never heard of that. That's like saying putting cheap gas in your car is going to mess your car up. No, it's not going to mess your car up. It's how you drive the car and how you maintain the car that's going to mess your car up. Cheap gas does not mess a motor up. It's lack of oil. It's lack of air filter. It's driving the car hard. It's stomping on the gas really hard from a dead stand, from a dead stop. It's slamming on the brakes hard. It's turning the wheel too fast. That's where cars get worn out. That's where you wear the tie rods out. It's not from putting cheap gas in your car. You don't wear the tires out by putting cheap gas in your car. You wear the tires out because you drive too hard on the tires. Same thing here. I prefer the cheap grinders because I can flex the head of the grinder. It's a plastic head. You can push it with your thumb. You see right there, I'm pushing with my thumb on it as I hold the tooth still. What that does is allows me to get that curve, and it allows me to keep the edge of the grinding disc structured properly so that it doesn't just cut straight in and bury itself into the tooth. Open gullet, you want the bottom of the tooth to be clean. You want the gullet to be nice and round. You want that point. You want the angle the same. You want the length of the teeth the same from front to back because that's your height of your tooth. If you look at any chainsaw tooth, they actually slope from the front of the tooth to the back of the tooth. They're higher in the front. As they get shorter, they get lower. So you want to keep all that equal. You want to keep your rakers trimmed down. I didn't go over all that stuff here. This isn't a how-to video as much as it is. This is a way to get a chain knocked in straight and explaining some other things. So I hope that helps you guys. Again, this is no replacement for hand filing. I'm making that disclaimer because I get yelled at all the time for using a grinder. It's just one way to get a chain back and working. They cut just fine. We use them for ice carving all the time. We never hand file for ice. There's no need to hand file a chain for ice. You beat on them so badly when you're cutting ice because the ice washes all the oil out of the chain. And you need chains quick, so you'll do 6 or 7 chains for an event, and you'll probably switch chains at least 2 or 3 times, if not go through the whole pile of chains that you pre-sharpened for the event. And it really doesn't matter. I have hand filed chains for ice carving, and I've used grinder for chains for ice carving, and tell you the truth, I think the grinder cut chains actually work better in ice because they're rougher and they're all even. Evenness is key number 1. Same length, same angle, same bite on the chain. Keep the point of the nose of the chain the same. Try to keep the rakers the same height. The more equalized your chain is, the more equalized the length of the teeth are, the height, all that stuff, the better your saw is going to cut in the end. Sharpness only matters if everything else is in check.